yet in its moment of truth, faces some isolation. So where does Turkey go from here? Let's have a listen to what the Turkish President Erdogan said about the ongoing Operation Peace Spring. Then we will discuss it further with our guests.
Günümüzde bölgemizin barış, huzur ve istikrarına en büyük tehdit kaynağı terör örgütleridir.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan addressed the 7th summit of the Turkic Council in Azerbaijan's capital Baku on Tuesday.
Suriye'nin kuzeyi barış pınarlarıyla yeniden yeşerene, hedeflerimize ulaşana kadar mücadelemizi sürdüreceğiz.
President Erdogan praised ongoing Operation Peace Spring in terms of regional peace and tranquility.
Yaklaşık 1000 kilometre karelik alanı bölücü terör örgütünün işgalinden kurtardık. İnşallah kısa zamanda Münbih'ten Irak sınırımıza kadar olan bölgeyi güvenli hale getirip ilk etapta 1 milyon, daha sonra 2 milyon Suriyeli sığınmacının evlerine kendi tercihleriyle dönmelerini temin edeceğiz.
Erdogan reminded the international community about Turkey's goals in northern Syria as part of the counter-terror operation.
Bunlardan ilki Suriye'nin kuzeyindeki PKK-YPG kaynaklı terör tehdidinin tamamen ortadan kaldırılmasıdır. Harekatın ikinci gayesi ise 8 yıldır misafir ettiğimiz 3 milyon 650 bin Suriyeli Arap'ın kendi ülkelerine, kendi vatanlarına huzuru kalple dönebilmelerini sağlamaktır.
The Turkish leader also accused the international community of assuming a hypocritic attitude on the fight against terrorism.
Suriye'de son 8 yılda yaşadıklarımız ise bir terör örgütü eliyle diğerinin tasfiye edilemeyeceğini göstermiştir.
Erdogan called for close cooperation between Turkic-speaking countries to deal with security issues they are facing.
Yukarı Karabağ sorununun en kısa sürede barışçıl yollarla ve Azerbaycan'ın toprak bütünlüğü esasında çözülmesi için elimizden gelen gayreti göstermeye devam edeceğiz.
All right, welcome back. Turkey's anti-terrorist Operation Peace Spring is underway in northern Syria. So far, according to the latest updates, more than 550 terrorists have been neutralized. Dozens of villages have been liberated. Unfortunately, there have been civilian and military casualties in Turkey. According to the latest reports, more than 10 people have been martyred by the incoming artillery from the YPG terrorists. Now you see a map right behind me. Before I explain you the map, it's important to talk about the main objectives of this anti-terrorist operation. The prime objective of this operation remains preventing the creation of a terrorist corridor. Why does Turkey want to prevent the creation of this terrorist corridor, and which terrorist organization is being targeted? Where mainly the PKK, PYD, YPG and Daesh terrorist organizations are being targeted in this operation. Who are the PKK? Well, the PKK is a recognized terrorist organization, not just by Turkey, but also by the United States and the European Union. The PYD, YPG are the Syrian offshoots of the PKK terrorist organization. In fact, the link between YPG and the PKK was acknowledged by top U.S. senators and military officials on multiple occasions. So, no country around the world would be okay with having a terrorist operating at its border. Just like that, Turkey is not okay with the PKK's Syrian offshoot YPG operating at its border and launching attacks into Turkey. So, preventing the creation of a terrorist corridor, that's the prime objective. The second objective of this operation is to create a buffer zone, safe zone in this particular area. Well, why does Turkey want to create a safe zone? First, to prevent, of course, the creation of a terrorist corridor, and also to help relocate around 2 million Syrian refugees. As a matter of fact, right now Turkey is hosting nearly 4 million Syrian refugees. According to the United Nations, the largest number of refugees anywhere around the world are hosted by Turkey. So, in order to ensure a safe return, a safe place of living for these refugees, Turkey will convert this area into a safe zone after successful completion of the operation, along with relocating 2 million refugees to this region. Turkey will be building infrastructures, including schools, hospitals, and many other things, same as it did in the Afrin region after conducting Operation Olive Branch. Now, these two are the main objectives of the operation: preventing the creation of a terrorist corridor and relocating around 2 million refugees into this region. Along with these two main objectives, respecting Syria's territorial integrity is, of course, another prime objective. Because the YPG-PYD do not only pose a threat to Turkey, but also to the Syrian people. In fact, let me give you an example. When the Operation Peace Spring started, the very next day, the YPG attacked Turkish cities of Ceylan, Pinar, Akçakale, and Nusaybin. As a result, one Syrian baby refugee who was living in Turkey was martyred. Many other civilian casualties also took place as a result of incoming artillery from the YPG terrorists. And this is not the first time they are firing artillery into Turkey. They have been doing that for many years. They have been using these particular cities, Ain al-Arab, Tal Abyad, Ras al-Ain, Kamishli, to launch attacks into Turkey. Over the past 3 decades, PKK-YPG have claimed the lives of 30,000 people, including women and children. So that's, of course, another point of discussion, but coming back to the map here. Well, I was telling you the third objective of this operation, which is respecting Syria's territorial integrity. Then, coming to the fourth one, fight against Daesh. Turkey has remained at the forefront of fighting against Daesh since the war against Daesh started. In fact, in the previous anti-terrorist operation Turkey conducted, Turkey neutralized about 3,000 Daesh terrorists. As a matter of fact, Turkey is a country which has suffered the most due to Daesh terrorism, especially between the years 2014 and 17. There were multiple attacks, Daesh terrorist attacks in Turkey, which claimed the lives of more than 100 people. Just like Turkey neutralized Daesh terrorists in the previous anti-terrorist operations, in this particular operation, Turkey will keep continuing its fight against Daesh and all sorts of terrorism. So, in total, we have 4 objectives of this operation: preventing the creation of a terrorist corridor, ensuring safe return for the Syrian refugees, respecting Syria's territorial integrity, and fight against Daesh. Now, let's get to the map. Here you have the map of Syria. Up north is Turkey, down south is Syria. This area has been proposed as a safe zone by Turkey. So far, the Turkish armed forces have liberated these particular regions, which you see in red color on the map, these particular regions from the terrorists. In these regions, more than 500 terrorists have been neutralized. Particularly Tal Abyad, Ras al-Ain, and area between Tal Abyad and Ras al-Ain. Now, Ras al-Ain and Tal Abyad are known as parts of the YPG terrorist organization. They have used these 2 cities to launch attacks into Turkey over many years. Now, the Turkish armed forces, along with the Syrian National Army, have moved towards Manbij. Although the operation in Manbij has not officially started, it is expected that the operation will start soon. According to the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, he made it very clear that he will not let a terrorist organization own this area. After clearing Manbij from terrorists, the city will be handed over to its real owners. But things have become more complicated in Manbij. The YPG has brokered a deal with the Assad regime, and now the Assad regime troops have also entered Manbij. So how is it going to further unfold? Well, nothing can be said at the moment. We will see what happens. So these are the latest updates we have so far. More than 550 terrorists have been neutralized. More than 50 villages have been liberated. There have been civilian casualties and military casualties in Turkey. The operation is continuing in a successful manner. However, when we talk about the style of reporting this operation has received, many things can be said. A black propaganda is underway, spreading fake news regarding Turkey's operation, posting pictures from the past, portraying as if Turkey is committing some sort of atrocities against civilians. But all these claims are baseless. In one of my previous bulletins, I debunked all these fake news being spread by some media outlets. If you want, you can, if you wish, you can watch it on our Facebook and YouTube channel. But coming to the latest of such kind of report, ABC, a very notable media outlet, used a fake video regarding Turkey's anti-terrorist operation, Peace Spring. Let's quickly take a look at that.
This video right here appearing to show Turkey's
U.S. news channel ABC has been busted after it shared a scandalous shooting video over the weekend and told its viewers that it's the footage taken during Turkey's Operation Peace Spring. However, the video was from a Knob Creek machine gun shot in the U.S., which was shot in the U.S. state of Kentucky back in April 2016 and loaded to YouTube in 2017. In the original video, one could actually see the onlookers with their cell phones. People slammed ABC's deliberate false reporting and taking Americans for a fool.
I think our soldiers should be there.
Most of the commentators said that ABC is doing it to hurt U.S. President Donald Trump, who has refused to give up on NATO ally Turkey over terror group PKK-YPG. Trump last week blamed his predecessor Barack Obama for cutting a deal with terrorist PKK in 2014 at the expense of a NATO ally.
This video right here appearing to show
After receiving harsh criticisms, ABC published a correction through its World News Tonight account on Monday.
This video obtained by ABC News.
All right, welcome back. As you saw, a black propaganda is underway, spreading fake news regarding Turkey's operation. We have seen many other videos of such kind on the internet, on the social media especially. Well, we will discuss, of course, this topic with our guest as well. Let me introduce our guest for today's program. Joining us now live from the United States is Dr. Mark Tomass, instructor at Harvard University Extension School. And in our studios, we have Professor Vehbi Bison from Ibn Khaldun University. Thank you very much to both of you for being with us. Professor Mark Tomass, let me start with you. We have discussed Syria on this program over the last 1 year. Please tell me, how are you looking at this Operation Peace Spring?
Well, I have mixed feelings about it. In principle, I believe Turkey has a right to have secure borders with Syria. In principle, I believe Turkey has a right to be worried about the PKK, especially when the PKK moved into Syria after the Syrian army withdrew from the eastern Euphrates. So there are security concerns that are legitimate. Just based on what I've been seeing the past few days, I am not quite sure how controlled what is referred to as the Syrian National Army is. They sound to me like jihadists, and I've seen you refer to that video, Jafar, but that's not the video that I've seen. There are other videos I've seen. One is of an assassination and possible rape of a head of a party, a woman. And the other one, it was an on-site execution, and with chants of Allahu Akbar taking place. So I'm wondering if this is a national army and it is controlled Why are they behaving like jihadists? So I am, in other words, concerned about what's happening on the ground. Although in principle, I think there has been a coordination taking place between the Syrian government and Turkey. To my knowledge, about a couple of weeks ago, there was a meeting between the chief intelligence officer of Syria, Ali Mamlouk, and the chief intelligence officer of Turkey in Moscow, where they agreed on the major issues as to where should the Turkish army and its Syrian protégés, where will they enter, and where would the Syrian army enter? So my understanding is the areas that have majority, not majority Kurdish, but where many Kurds live there, that's the area where Syria will enter, and the rest of the eastern Euphrates, while Turkey will enter the areas that you're referring to as Ras Al Ain and Tel Abyad. So in other words, it looks to me that on paper there is some understanding so that a clash will be avoided, but on the ground that's something I cannot guarantee.
Okay, Professor Vebi Baisan, how do you look at the Syrian National Army?
Well, there is a lot of misconception about it, and also internationally misleading reports. This Syrian National Army, the groups that Turkey is backing, and that's there is a rumor that these are the jihadists that had been taken out of mainly Idlib or had been positioned near Afrin and all that. But in fact, these are the fresh troops Turkey mobilized in their within their operation to clear the area, which is around like 480 kilometers and which is 30 kilometers deep. So these are the people under tight control of Turkey, and there are often reports that they're misbehaving and they immediately take it under control. So it is actually part of this collective effort where Turkey wants to actually give the authority and ruling to the regional people. This is to say that Turkey is not there as an occupying force. I'll explain this soon, but Turkey, what's trying to do is to give the power of administration to local groups. And this would be done by the Arabs and Kurds alike once the areas are cleared. So therefore, they minimize their, ground operations that had the Turkish army personnel is operational. You see what I mean? So they are basically minimizing their presence there, but rather mobilizing local groups. So that's how we can explain Syrian National Army.
Okay. Professor Mark Tomass, let me come to you now. Now, Turkey's operation is continuing in a successful manner. It seems like more than 550 terrorists have been neutralized. You said that you do believe Turkey has legitimate security concerns at its southern border. What would you like to say about the kind of reaction this operation has received from Turkey's NATO allies?
I will answer your question, Jafar, but just let me follow up on your guest's comment. I totally agree with the notion of giving control to local groups. In other words, they should control their municipalities. That is, use the state institutions, central state institutions, but populate these institutions with local groups. And this has been something I've been calling for since I published my paper in 2012, even before the conflict turned violent. There is no other solution but to give control to local groups. Now, having said that, to come back to your question, the reaction, I think, is this. I mean, there are many aspects to it. One is it shows that President Trump is weak. He is getting attacked by his own party, and he obviously will be attacked by the Democrats. So this is an opportunity for everybody to take advantage of this situation and argue against his plan of withdrawing from Syria. Now, who is doing this? Some people just want to embarrass President Trump for no other reason. They just want to embarrass him, so they're putting pressure on him. And for that reason, he is responding by saying, I'm going to place sanctions on Turkey. And after he said that he will be imposing sanctions, they said that these sanctions are not enough, so you have to do more. So it looks like there is a conflict from within the United States. What we have to do is we have to analyze as to see in whose interest is it for people to ask for the United States to stay in eastern Turkey. Who could possibly benefit from it? The notion of ISIS expanding, that may be possible, but that's just because the Syrian government is not there. In other words, there is no central authority that will rule in this area once the United States leaves, because these non-state actors like the YPG or other armed groups, these are not capable of controlling ISIS on their own. So all of the underground networks that ISIS has can be activated, and that is
if I may ask something here. Now, especially after the Operation Peace Spring has started, we have seen people have become concerned about the future of Daesh. Quite rightly, Daesh does pose a great threat to our existence. But it is interesting, though, how some people trust the YPG to hold Daesh prisoners, but not the second largest military in NATO.
I mean, that obviously doesn't make sense. I think the members of Daesh, just the fact that they publicly announce that they are members of Daesh, that makes them into criminals or potential criminals. I don't see why any legitimate authority would not be able to detain them. So that definitely doesn't make sense. But I think the problem is that many people are dismayed by the disappearance of a prospect of cutting off eastern Syria and making it into an independent state. So because of that, they are coming up with many reasons, including ISIS. I think ISIS could have been controlled a long time ago by the Syrian authority once it has taken care of many parts that are once it had put down many rebellious parts. They could have moved into eastern Euphrates a long time ago, but the United States is not allowing them. And actually, just I heard that a few hours ago that the U.S. has bombarded one convoy that was heading towards Raqqa. And actually, we know for sure just a few hours ago that many convoys have been sent towards Raqqa, and maybe as we are speaking, they are entering the area of Raqqa. So if the U.S. is concerned about ISIS, then they have to allow the legitimate authority to take over that area. So who are these people who are not happy about the lack of prospects after now for an independent authority to emerge in eastern Syria? I would say one has to look closely at the newcons. The newcons don't like the idea of the whole newcon project collapsing, because as I said many times in the past, the project is to dismantle all of the countries in the Middle East and make them into smaller parts. All of the opposition that can exist or potentially can exist toward Israel is to weaken them. So if the entity that was planned to exist in eastern Euphrates loses any potential to exist, then you will see a lot of people who are unhappy.
Okay. Professor Vehbi Baisan, now let me come to you. The U.S. Over the past years remained a key stakeholder in Syria. Now that the U.S. troops are out, is that a favorable development for countries such as Turkey, Russia, and Iran?
Well, depends how you look at it. But we should, I think, go back a little in history and remember what had happened. First, the Syrian civil war broke out around 2011. And I was there early 2011. I could see the tension that actually, something people sensed that what awful was going to happen. And then, Arab Spring turned into civil war in Syria. We know what had happened after that. Around 600,000 people lost their lives. Half of country either became a refugee, had to travel out of the country, or what we call in Arabic nazihin, which is the within internal displaced people. 2014, Obama, if I'm not wrong, the year, came up with a plan, a fight against terror, namely ISIS. Over there, he mentioned 4 articles, 4 items. But what's important is the third one. He said US soldiers will not involve in any fight in the Middle East, namely in Syria, and we will use local partners. So Turkey was alarmed, really alarmed, said, who is these partners? And then we find out later that the ones, YPG. And in the pretext, since then, fight against ISIS, so far, 80,000 people armed, financed, trained, and they gained battle field experience. And now they are all of them at the Turkish border. Now, if the camera can show the map behind us, probably would explain more or less what it is. One is that, first of all, we have eastern Euphrates, the river, but in fact, we have the western side where Turkey already entered and
conducted 2 different operations here.
Yeah, and established the security at El Afrin and El Bab areas. Now, look at it carefully. This is the area where what Turkey wants to establish. 30 kilometers because you have this M4, which goes from more or less to Aleppo, linking all the way in Iraq, Mosul. So Turkey is saying all these armed people should go beyond M4. So basically, roughly, it makes 30 to 35 kilometers. Now, but this map tells us something else. Let me mention first what we have on this map is the yellow areas are where YPG control. So we are looking at the northern part of Syria. And the rest controlled by the regime. And dark blue areas controlled by Turkey. So what we don't see on this map is the question. What doesn't exist on this map is ISIS, right? So all the maps now, current ones you look, you can't find ISIS anywhere to be located. Then the question is that, if ISIS is nowhere to be seen, but I know they exist, I'm not denying them, why do we have 80,000 people stationed at my border? That's what Turkey is saying. That constitutes a serious national security threat for any country. So far, I'm not mentioning any ethnic background. I didn't say they're Kurds or anything. Even if they're Eskimos, this is a problem, you see? So Turkey is saying, number one, I need to do this security area, zone, whatever you name it, doesn't matter for me, they say, because I feel this 80,000 armed, financed, trained people are a threat for my national security. Number two, we have 3.5 million Syrian guests in our country, right? So it's a huge burden to our economy, but because our cultural significance, Ankara never voiced, how much they spend, the billions of dollars. And these people got to go back to their country. Many of them came from this region anyway, you see. So Turkey is saying, all right, since the international community is doing nothing, let me at least do something. Establish the security and safety for these people, and let me build housing for them.
Professor, if I may ask here now, many people are wondering, would the repatriation of refugees, would it be voluntary or?
Oh yeah, because many of them coming, it's a good question, wait a minute. Now, Turkey, under international, non-international laws and regulations, has no obligation to host 3.5 million people. But please don't misquote. I'm not saying they should go back. I'm not saying I'm against them. Turkey has no legal obligation, I'm saying, as Turkey did not have a legal obligation to open their borders and let these people in. We did this for humanitarian reason, and we continue doing so with, again, humanitarian reason. Why I say this is because I'm not a politician. If Ankara wouldn't voice it this way, because in our culture it's embarrassment. You don't say this is your guest, because these people, we lived hundreds of years together, and now they are in desperate condition. We're not going to let them down. But why I say this is because international organizations that exclusively responsible of refugees nowhere to be seen. This is their job. Where are they? Where is this UN High Commission for Refugees? I don't know why it's high, but too high that they don't see the refugees on the ground. So Turkey is saying, let me help do the housing. But there is something third, very, very important. As you know, the regime and Russians' successful plan, they swept all these opposition armed groups from north all the way down to south, from south all the way to north, and they collected them in Idlib. Today, more than 3 million civilians live in Idlib, and there are thousands of armed, mercenaries or whatever you name them, some in terrorist. Now, Russia and the regime wants to start an operation there. Any significant movement towards Idlib will create instantly 1 million refugees. They have nowhere but to come to Turkish border, whereas the Bab al-Hawa area. Now, again, international community is nowhere to be seen to host these refugees. So Turkey is saying, perhaps we can guide them and, again, establish their safety and security in this region.
And right now we are seeing some harsh criticism coming from the Western allies of Turkey. Professor Mark Tomass, let me ask you here, talking about the ethnicity, isn't labeling the PKK as, quote-unquote, the Kurds the same as labeling Al-Qaeda as the Saudis, Daesh as the Arabs, Boko Haram as the Nigerians, the IRA as the Irish, the Nazi Party as the Germans, the KKK as white people? I mean, what's to stop people from labeling these other terrorist organizations as the voice of an entire ethnicity?
Yeah, it's a good point. Certainly, the PKK does not represent the entire Kurdish population. Although that said, there is because I'm familiar with because I lived in Aleppo, and I had friends among the Kurds, and there was a Kurdish quarter right on to the north where I lived. So I knew people who were members of the underground organization, the PKK. While most Kurds are not members of the PKK, and they don't actually accept its ideology, I'm speaking here about the early 80s and late 70s, when their ideology was still Marxist-Leninist. They have gotten through a transformation, and now they are something else. Because they speak about establishing a Kurdish state, so there is, even from people who don't belong to the PKK, there is a general sympathy. Although they do not necessarily ascribe to all of the PKK's, let's say, ideological principles as put out by Abdullah Öcalan. So PKK is a cult, and this is what the people in the West don't know. It's a cult. That is dominated by the ideology of Abdullah Öcalan. It's not really a Kurdish ideology, and its ideology is actually alien to most people. What is surprising is that the members of, at least the elite members of the PKK seem to be educated, yet nevertheless they advance an extreme nationalist agenda, which is totally unacceptable in the region, simply because they are not able to, they are in conflict with Turkey, they're in conflict with Syria, they're in conflict with Iraq and with Iran. So it is an unreasonable national aspiration that they are trying to advance. So I would blame the ignorance of the West by mixing these two, mixing between the PKK and the Kurds. I mean, what the West can do is they can point to the Kurdish population within Turkey and say, well, here you have millions of people who have been living in peace. So it's not really about the Kurds versus Turks or the Kurds versus the Arabs or anybody else. It's more about organizations that are controlled by some extremist groups.
Okay. Now, Professor Rabi Baisan, I think Professor Mark Tomass has made a very good point. This brings us to the question. These developments call into question the definition of terrorism. So what exactly is terrorism? I'm looking at a dictionary meaning of terrorism, and it states, point number one, the use of violence and threats to intimidate or coerce, especially for political purposes. The state of fear and submission produced by terrorism or terrorization. A terroristic method of governing or of resisting a government. So are these not textbook definition of terrorism that define the tactics of YPG and the PKK, or is this definition of terrorism really just in any entity or individual that poses a threat to the United States or other major European countries?
Well, probably so far as the group not known much in the West and doesn't terrorize them, so it's not considered a terrorism probably. So it's like, so then that brings us to this topic of my terrorist is better than your terrorist type of thing. This is to say that YPG for them is so far away. Whatever they do probably, you know, just doesn't make any influence in their daily life. So as a result, they're not going to be defined by the Western even authorities as terrorists. So that's a dangerous thing to do. It's absolutely dangerous thing to do. It's the same applies to when any given country in need of any international help. This is to say, for example, now the regime, they made an agreement with YPG over there, or SDA, Syrian Democratic Forces, and now they're moving north. But we know the person who's leading it is the Suhail Hassan, is a butcher, right? So how many people the regime should kill until international community would say this is enough? You see, so that's where we have another problem. Sometimes you have the state terror, and that, as we saw in Syria, more than 500,000 people killed, and still they're talking about, well, we should sit on a table with Bashar and, you know, let's make an agreement. So I think somewhere something is wrong because innocent people on the ground pay the price, and heavy price, but actually those who contain the power, has the power, never use it to the benefit of humanity or the people. So I'm not surprised really that you know, YPG is not considered or even anywhere near terrorists, because in their mind they are the fighters, fighters that fighting against Daesh terror, which is true. They're armed for this purpose, but Daesh is all the way down kind of Hasaka area or below and in Iraq, but majority of the armed people we see in the north of Syria at Turkish border for probably another purpose. So this purpose is to be, change the demography of the area to the benefit of some ethnic backgrounds and chase the others out. Even if you don't agree with their ideology, they simply chase these people out. So then they have these aspirations to establish their own cantons or even a state. But we should understand that actually Turkey is not against Kurds in the region, because that's the propaganda of it. Turkey is against the armed groups who constitute serious national security threat. Look, if you leave these guns in the region, and the gunners, they will kill each other. They will kill Kurds to Turkmens, Turkmens to Arabs, Arabs to this. We see this in Libya. Today, Libya divided into 3 sections, a civil war going on there, but actually we don't hear any news about it.
Indeed, a dire situation. Now, Professor, let me quickly go live over to the Turkey-Syria border, where our A-News correspondent Mohammed Mansour is present. Mohammed, very quickly, if you can tell us what is the latest what are the latest developments that have taken place across the border between Turkey and Syria?
The latest, Jafar, is the city of Manbij. Till this moment, the Turkish forces and the Syrian National Army is advancing successfully towards the city center after liberating at least 3 villages, important villages surrounding the city of Manbij. Also, we've witnessed the city of the other city at the border, which also have been attacked by the terrorist organizations like YPG and PKK, which have been fired at least mortar shells, and it led to the injury of 3 children. At the field also, before entering those 3 liberated villages in the city of Manbij, we know from inside sources that the Syrian National Army has seized big amounts of armory and weapons from those terrorists, and the Turkish army has discovered a huge tunnel network they are being using this to attack the Turkish forces and the Syrian National Army. But back, Jafar, also to the city of Ras Al Ain, which has been announced as a liberated city since 2 days ago. The Turkish forces are now exchanging fire with some of the remnants of the terrorists after liberating the city. It seems that the YPG and the PKK is trying to retrieve the city of Ras Al Ain after they have been defeated in the last 2 days. Also, we've witnessed 1 day after the liberation of the city of Tel Al Abyad, which has been in front of the city of Akçakale after firing mortar shells on the city of Akçakale, and also many homes have been damaged partially, but no injuries were occurred in the city of Akçakale. That's why the Operation Peace Spring is continuing to advance in the day number 7, and it's trying to achieve and to accomplish its goals, which have been announced in the first days of the peace spring operation, when they said that they want to eliminate the terrorism along the borders, and that's Turkey's right, and also to solve the problem of the Syrian refugees as well, to create a safe zone and to resettle voluntarily and safety the 3.5 million Syrian refugees.
Ahmed Mansour, thank you very much for that update live from the border between Turkey and Syria. Now, let me come to you, Professor Mark Tomass. You have followed all the latest developments. It seems like the outlook of Syria is changing. YPG, which were allied with the United States, have now brokered a deal with the Russians and Assad. How do you look at this latest outlook of Syrian war?
I was looking yesterday at a communique issued by them, by the YPG, saying that we have entered an agreement with the Syrian army, only a military agreement and not a political agreement, and therefore we refuse to raise the Syrian flags on our institutions. We want to maintain our own flags, which seems to be quite odd. It seems to be they are a bunch of amateurs, not knowing that this is not how you deal. This is not how they would deal with the Syrian regime. And so what I understand is that there is some sort of confusion on their side. As to what they have agreed to and what would the consequences be of the Syrian army advancing into their territories. I believe that they will eventually be disarmed, and there will have no political presence. If anything, they may be incorporated within some sort of civilian infrastructure, such as civilian councils, within the areas that people live. But as far as an organization, as far as a military, political organization, I believe that they have no prospect to exist, because simply the nature of the Syrian regime is that it does not incorporate such non-state forces within its own ranks. So I don't see any future from now on. I think the entire project of creating this independent entity in the Eastern Euphrates has vanished. There are no prospects. How long would that take to clear it up? That I think it's an open question. And I think that a lot of it will depend on how the Syrian government and the Turkish government deal with each other. I am concerned about one thing, is that I think what we have to do is we have to distinguish between leaders and states. The leaders come and go, and the states remain. The Syrians and the Turks are going to be bordering each other until the end of time. So they have to learn how to live with each other. Now, leaders can come in, and maybe the leaders don't like each other, but we have to put that aside for the greater good, for the good of maintaining peace between the two countries. So I think total coordination will be required. I understand that it will be difficult from the perspective of Turkey to sit with the Syrian or representative of the Syrian regime and talk to them as if nothing had happened. I understand that that's a concern, but maybe they could do it on a lower level. The security question is an important question for both countries. So I think that could be settled in many different ways.
Okay. Professor Vehbi Baisan, very quickly, we're really short on time. There are reports that Assad forces have moved towards Manbij, where Turkey is planning to conduct an operation. Is a military confrontation likely? Could a military confrontation take place between Damascus and Ankara?
Well, probably both sides would prefer to avoid that to begin with. That's my initial thought. And even there may be some sort of low-level cooperation in that too, because it's not the benefit of both countries. It is obvious that Turkey's operation is not really to steal Syrian land, because since the beginning of the conflict, Turkey always emphasized that the Syrian territory, integrity of Syrian territories and the land. So I think Turkey will stick with that and will do their best to maintain this position. So basically, Turkey's operation, in effect, is benefit to the regime in a way, like there is no conflict of interest, because Damascus is not happy to see some people, non-Arab, non-state actors, are taking the land and putting their flag. I mean, no nation state would like to see these things. Although, under some certain circumstances, probably kind of a federal structure can be maintained or established. But this is not one of these, you see. So in that case, Damascus must be happy because all these armed groups are now in a way weakened and they're chased away from Turkish border and etc. But because there are deep divisions between Ankara and Damascus, we don't expect really anytime soon for a really full-fledged cooperation. But nevertheless, repeat myself, initial thought is that both sides would like to keep away from each other. But Turkey is determined for this operation. As I said, like for three main reasons I just mentioned now, it's vital for them. Because if Turkey doesn't do this operation, then 5 years from now, we have much bigger problem of all these arms in the area, armed groups, and there will be no international community that today criticizing Turkey will nowhere to be seen.
All right. Professor Vehbi Baisan, thank you very much for being with us. Professor Mark Tomass, thank you very much for being with us. We really appreciate your analysis. This brings us to the end of another episode of The Brief. Stay tuned on A News to get the latest updates regarding Turkey's Operation Peace Spring. See you on Thursday.